Pedantry in politics versus the law. What do we mean when we say a person is in the country illegally?
The New England Take.
It's the New England Take. I'm your host, AJ Kierstead. I'm joined today by Professor of Law of UNH Franklin Pierce School of Law and now New Hampshire State Representative Buzz Scherr, because he wasn't busy enough. Welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be back again, AJ.
All right, so this is we've had discussions informally around this topic. I was originally going to have Dexter, who's a very MAGA-leaning guy, on the discussion, which would have made that a very hilarious conversation. But maybe we'll do something like that in the future. But
yeah, that would make you look like the moderate in the group. Right?
I know, it made me look like a Democrat. I'd look like a Democrat in this conversation. How did this happen? But I mean, something that always drives me nuts, and I get it. What's always hilarious to me is the hypocrisy when it comes to like Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court. Is the Republicans always get pissed at her. It's like she's being so pedantic. She's like doing this, and just looking at the law and what it says. You may disagree with part of that, but it's always hilarious. Like, to me, I always envision interpretation of the law as very pedantic. Like, it's always down. You got to read the words that are there and justify them.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I mean, I wouldn't use the word pedantic because, in this broadest sense, when you think about law, and what we want people to be able to do, what we don't want them to be able to do in the context of criminal law, we all have wonderful ideas in our head. The challenge of being a lawyer or being a judge or being a legislator is trying to turn those great ideas in our head that, we're convinced of is the right thing, but turn it into words. And that's really hard, it turns out, because all we got are words, and words never capture the profound fullness of our ideas in our head. So what we're stuck doing is we write something. Okay, this sounds good. So now it becomes a law, and they say, wait a minute. Now the lawyers say, oh, but what do you mean by this word? What did you really mean by this what was the idea in your head? And so it's the nature of law is to be stuck with figuring out words and interpreting words. And it's you're talking to the right guy in this sense. It's a noble profession. But is it hard to do. And it makes us look pedantic because we're stuck with words when, Dexter or me or you, we know what the right thing is in our head, but just, try and turn it into something that is constructive and actionable. It's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, and that leads me into, so I actually reached out to Attorney Abramson of Shaheen and Gordon. I reached out to him before I knew he was going to be over at the federal district court this week, very busy, and was definitely not going to have time for any nonsense from me, but he at least sent me a quick little response, because I asked him...
Try and clean up the language in that, AJ.
Yeah, exactly. So he wrote, I will note that your premise, if someone is in the U.S. illegally, is faulty. We won't even get into the use of the term defensible here. One of the biggest problems with public immigration discourse in 2025 America is that everything is framed as binary, and the reality of long-standing legal principles, statutes, regulations, and case law is anything but.
Let me give you a couple examples. Some of the people who are in this country from other countries are here pending the resolution of their asylum petition, right? That doesn't make them here illegally, all right? Because they filed the necessary paperwork and are looking for asylum. So group one. Group two, if you are on a student visa or any other kind of visa and the visa expires, you are deportable as a civil matter, but you have committed no crime. You're not here illegally in the sense that it's not a crime to be in the United States just and be undocumented. It's a civil infraction. It makes you deportable, but it's not a crime. And the huge majority of people who are in this country, undocumented, are overstaying visas. You know, whether that was their original intent or not, and they're you can charge them with civil infraction and deport them, but they're not here illegally in the sense of it's a crime. That said, it is a crime to enter the United States illegally without documents, and that's a different people, but a different group of people. So those are three different groups of people, and we make it binary. You got documents or you don't got documents. It's a crime, etc. But it's not. It's three different. And the large majority of people who are here that may have committed civil infractions for being here without documents are those who've overstayed visas. They're not people who snuck in through the borders.
So I guess my biggest thing is, and a good part of this is probably logistics from the get-go, is it's probably almost impossible for the federal government to keep track of everyone that's overstaying their visas. You tell them, hey, you got to remove, and make sure they're removed at that point.
First, you got to figure out whether they're still here.
Yeah.
When did their visa expire? So they got to keep track of when their visa expired and do, quote unquote, some form of outreach to figure out, are they still in the country or did they go back? Maybe the immigration at the borders, Customs and Border Patrol can say whether they've left the country after their visa expired. So, yeah, that in and of itself is an administrative nightmare. The next layer of this that's difficult for people to understand, it's a deeper but more important layer. A lot of the people who are here on visas are students or people who are working for companies. They're valuable to this country. One, they're paying tuition at our universities. Two, very often they're transitioning into jobs in this country. Three, they are very frequently people involved in high technology of some sort, be it physics, particle physics, or be it the newer technology that we're talking about. And many people are in this country on visas to work for technology companies or to work in science labs that develop basic research. So to lump everyone who overstays a visa into we got to get rid of them because they're dangerous to this country, really, it's just it's oversimplifying who that group of people is. I'm not saying they're all, we shouldn't figure out who's overstayed their visa, is not working, is committing crimes, and that kind of thing. I think that's important to figure out. But it's easier when you're running for a political office or running for president or running for senator or congressperson to just have these very, very simple categories like all undocumented immigrants, and you break it down, you start to think about, do we want that? And it just had one more group, farmers in California, in Florida, in the Midwest, they don't want all the undocumented people working for them to leave because they can't find any people who are U.S. citizens or U.S. residents to fill those jobs. They don't want to fill those jobs, and they don't fill those jobs, and it turns into a big problem. The hotel business around the United States, or the restaurant business, they're everywhere. They're struggling to find people to work. They can't get people to work. It's not as if these the big group undocumented aliens are taking people's jobs away in the areas that I just talked about. So, I've gone on for a bit, but just to show it's complicated. And if we think about it well, it's not easy to make these broad statements of principle.
Dexter and I actually both agree that um, we'd be very intrigued to see how much of the current immigration system issues would be resolved by a proper, fixed, or corrected migrant system for people to come in and work. It's obviously there needs to be restrictions. Like we can't just let everyone that wants to come to the country work. Just cross the border to find a job or whatever, which could be catastrophic and cause many issues. But if we had a proper system that worked to get people into the country to work with visas and it was properly maintained and everything, it'd be fascinating. Then maybe this is one I can hope and dream. I'm not holding my breath, but with the sudden stopping of people coming across the border that we're seeing right now because of the chaos that the Trump administration is doing, this is the perfect time to fix it, but no one has any desire to fix it.
Well, yeah, there's desire, but there's not political will. I think there's a lot of people who desire to fix it. The package that has to be built, it contains that item. It also contains the item of, pick the period of time. But if you can establish let's say 10 years, if you can establish you've been here for 10 years or 20 years, again, pick the period of time and are undocumented, we got to have some form of an amnesty program. It's just not feasible to just try to do what the Trump administration appears to be doing, is deport everybody. We got to figure, there's got a piece of it has got to be some kind of amnesty program, for their children who are born in this country, for, the DACA people, or for their parents, or, I don't have a simple answer, but that's got to be part of that package because, it reduces the number that we need to figure out what we're going to do with.
In theory, but politically, I don't trust the federal government to not continue to roll over or every few years just do this over and over again. In a perfect world, I'd love it to have. Fine, we're gonna do it once. It's gonna this year. If you've been here for this amount of time, you got some proof. Once again, we deal with the whole bureaucratic issue of you got to have evidence that you've been here for a set amount of time in some way. But I don't trust the feds to not just continue to do this over and over again and lower the time frame over time.
You got to build a good system so that won't happen. If it's not working, you can trust the electorate to take those people who are passing it over and over again out of office. That's the ultimate check on it. But, I think however we get out of this bleeping mess, it's going to take some really heavy lifting, be it the visa piece that you were talking about, be it the amnesty piece I was talking about, be it really, part of the package is also going to include staffing it with a hell of a lot more immigration judges and lawyers so we can speed up the asylum system. Reinvigorating what used to be and what has made Manchester such an interesting city amidst growth. The Trump administration has stopped the refugee program completely. And that was a great transition program for certain groups of people from, Cambodia or, all the different places. Several years ago, 5 or 10 years ago, there was 72 different languages spoken in the Manchester public schools. Some might groan at that. Maybe Dexter would groan at that. But boy, as those people grow into longtime residents of Manchester and eventually citizens, which, the refugee program puts them on a track to, what a rich city Manchester will be in terms of culture, its culture and varieties of talent in the city. So, but just to go back to where I started, there's a lot of heavy lifting involved in even doing just what you suggested, and figuring that all out. Some of it is just front end stuff that we got to wade our way through it. But once we get through it and have a program in place and working, it won't be, the lifting won't be as heavy. But that's going to take a while. That'd be probably 3 to 5 years to do that. And boy, Republicans are getting so much mileage out of "I hate immigrants" that there's no political will in that party to deal other than that small group of Republicans and Democrats, for that matter, who a couple of years ago negotiated a good deal that got killed. To reform the system, but.
I mean, unfortunately, when it comes down to it's good. I think a lot of this comes down to rank politics, like you started to go into. It's so much of it, in my opinion, screwed up border policy during Biden and pre-Trump with some of the. I know Obama was actually surprisingly cracked down when it came to a lot of deportations and things like that.
Actually, Biden did a decent job too.
The issue is the southern border.
Yeah, it's not the northern border, by the way.
That's less, but that's debatable, honestly, in my opinion, because I think a lot of it comes down, we just don't have any data, because it's in the middle of the friggin' woods. It's the same as the desert. Like, we don't have any real numbers down at the southern border. It's all assumptions.
But who's, everybody. I've talked to Republicans about this, and most people in New Hampshire agree that have any awareness of this issue, that all the people coming in illegally over the Canadian-New Hampshire border are not staying in New Hampshire. They're going someplace else. It's just a transition point. So we in New Hampshire got to pay for all of that to stop that.
So when it comes to... Let's get to my initial question that I envisioned in my mind that we haven't directly talked about. It also, I think, comes down to primarily politics, where if someone is in the country illegally, as in, I say you need all the prefaces when you start going down this path. If someone is deportable, they entered illegally, they are not supposed to be here. I don't understand. I think Democrats would gain a lot of goodwill for moderates if they would begin to stop the BS when it comes to, well, everyone should be allowed to be here. They magically become really open borders all of a sudden, and it really is problematic to long-term fixing the situation.
That's part of it. The problem with the problem for the Democrats is, at least in the public political discourse, the people that ICE are deporting are here legally. Like Abrogado, I forgot his last name, the person who was here legally and was deported to El Salvador, to that terrible prison. He was here legally. They're deporting the wrong people. They're deporting people like the guy at Columbia who was spoke pro-Palestinian people in favor of the Palestine and against Israel. He was deported because he was a risk to national security. Those are the people who are getting publicity. We don't know whether the Trump administration is actually going after the people who came across the border illegally and who are currently here illegally. Put aside the expired visa people, that core group that you just talked about. We have no idea whether that ICE is going after them. They're just they're going after they're out of the blue. They canceled the visa of that Dartmouth student without even telling her, for no reason that is apparent. The guy I just talked about who's deported from what, Maryland to El Salvador. Um,
It
he,
was supposed to be. We were sold this
it was a
huge bill of
mistake.
goods. We were so this huge bill of goods. We're gonna start. Homan was gonna who's hilarious. I'm sorry, you probably hate Homan, but he's hilarious. But you saw this huge game that we were gonna be getting rid of all these criminals. We've got a game plan. We're gonna do
It's
this.
not who
This,
they're
this.
deporting, though.
Yeah, so they totally have screwed the pooch when it comes to it. The numbers are not even close to what they were predicting. They don't have data to show that they're doing what they initially were saying. They've now got all this nonsense where it's I don't care what side of the Israel-Palestine issue you're on, this is irrelevant to our current immigration system, and they're focusing on this. This needs to stop.
The problem becomes the Republicans in that way, or ICE, which is the most out of control law enforcement agency in the United States, always has been. So, they may be going so far that there's going to be a backlash in the in some wings of the Republican Party, or the moderate center in the United States politically, because boy, that plane load of so-called terrorists, domestic terrorists who are members of the gang, it's a really open question whether how many of them, if any, were members of a gang. The Venezuelans are like 235 of them. They're just, as to use your formal non-legal language, ICE is screwing the pooch. They're just, deport the easy ones. Somebody, all the undocumented people who have serious criminal convictions. Those are the easy ones. Don't deport people who are here legally but have a misdemeanor conviction for something. They gotta. ICE isn't playing politics. They've been unleashed by Trump, and they're just going bonkers. And there's going to be, I think there's already developing a political backlash. So Democrats got the problem you described. They are created the appearance of being in favor of open borders, and the Republicans, who are bonded at the hip, fairly or not, with ICE, have the craziness of what ICE is doing. Boy, doesn't this not lead to a way we can solve this problem? We need a Richard Nixon going to China figure to begin to figure out how to deal with this. Just for the record, that's not going to be me.
It's not going to be. You're not running next. You're not 2028 here, Buzz. Come on.
No,
Here's your
I'm
announcement.
declaring I am not a candidate. My Sherman-like declaration.
Can we both agree that the feds are terrible? I don't care who's running it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the crazy thing that's happening in the legislature right now, I'm on House Criminal Justice. We've seen a bunch of immigration bills. Is the Republicans seem to be, it's unclear whether it's going to pan out or not, but they seem to want to have our law enforcement agencies become tools of ICE. And, they don't have, our law enforcement agencies don't have the staffing to do that, and it's going to cost counties money. It's one thing to make a deal with the feds, to make a deal with, a House of Correction to say, can you hold this person for 48 more hours after their criminal charges are done with so we can come and pick them up? You can fight about whether we should be doing that or not, or whether, we notified them at the front end of them getting criminal charges, say, hey, we got this guy, his sentence is ending here, come and get him before the end. I've always advocated that's enough. We don't have to, be servants to apparently ICE doesn't work weekends or something. They need 48 hours to get their act together to get. But, that I understand notifying ICE that we got somebody who is listed as in your system as having a civil infraction, but to deputize police officers in law enforcement agencies like the state police to go around checking people's papers. I mean, we in New Hampshire, the live free or die state, really want to become servants of the federal government who's never showed itself to be good at this stuff? That's the debate that, you know, I hope to be provoking as we go forward in the legislature, because that's really the question in the legislature right now. How far do we want to go? There is a bill that I think has been retained, where if a local law enforcement agency, a town, did not agree to work with ICE, then they get reported to the governor, and if that is found to be true, the 25% of all the state money that goes to that town will be withheld. I mean, just get a grip, people.
Get a grip, people. That universal message. Get a grip. All right. I agree. Agreed. All right, Representative.
The Rodney King message. Can't we all just get along?
Exactly. Come on, guys. Come on. All right, Representative Buzz Scherr, thanks so much for joining me.
A pleasure.
All right, NewEnglandTake.com. Please be sure to like and subscribe. Be sure to check out the Granite Grok. I'm there every Saturday. They post this episode, our episodes over there too, so please give them a little bit of support too. And talk to you soon.